If you've ever built a tiny Lightning Web Components demo and then tried to scale it up into a massive real-world project, things can get messy and fast. So today, we're going to skip the basics and dive right into how the pros architect their LWC projects so they can actually last.
Here's what we'll cover. First, we'll talk about the real cost of chaos when a project gets disorganized. Then, I'll introduce you to a professional blueprint for making your project scalable. We'll break down the anatomy of that blueprint, cover the rules for clean code that make it all work, and finally, see how the whole system comes together in a real application.
So, first up, why are we even talking about this? Let's get real about what happens when good projects start to go bad, usually because there was no structure from the start. Look, in a tiny demo or a quick proof of concept, you can get away with just throwing files wherever. Structure honestly feels like overkill. But on a real project with dozens or even hundreds of components, that lack of structure becomes a huge problem. It leads straight to confusing code, logic that's copied and pasted all over the place, a total nightmare to maintain, and a painfully slow onboarding process for any new developer who joins the team. The good news is there is a proven way to avoid all that chaos. It really just comes down to having a solid blueprint before you even start building. This is the professional's approach, and it's all about designing applications that are meant to grow. And that blueprint? Well, it all starts with a clear, intentional folder structure. Now, this isn't just about being neat and tidy. It's about creating a system where every single piece of code has a logical home. This simple idea is the foundation for building a code base that's readable, scalable, and reusable. At its core, the blueprint is actually really simple. It just boils down to 4 main folders inside your LWC directory: base, feature, pages, and utils. Don't let this simplicity fool you, though. Each one of these has a very distinct and super important job in your application.
Okay, so let's break down that blueprint. We're going to look at the specific job of each of these 4 foundational layers, because once you understand their purpose, the whole system just clicks.
All right, here it is, all laid out. Your base folder is for your generic, reusable UI bits. Think of things like spinners or modals that don't have any specific business logic. The feature folder is where you group components by business function, like everything related to, say, account management. Pages holds the top-level components that you'll actually drag onto a Lightning page. And finally, utils is for your pure JavaScript helpers, things like formatters or constants that have no UI at all.
So, having the folders is one thing, but making this blueprint truly work, well, that takes some discipline. This brings us to the rules for clean code. These are the principles that really bring the structure to life. Let's start with something that seems so small but has a massive impact. Naming. Just look at the difference here. Good names like account list or case details tell you exactly what the component does, right? But bad names like test1 or mycomp, they just create confusion and technical debt. Meaningful names are such an easy win for readability.
Next up is the golden rule, separation of concerns. The idea is simple. Every file type has exactly one job. Your HTML is only for UI and layout. Your JavaScript handles all the logic and data. CSS is just for styling, and all that heavy business logic, that belongs on the server in your Apex classes. Sticking to this makes your components clean, easy to test, and way easier to debug.
Okay, these are the standards that really bring it all home. It means you're always using the @wire service to get data from the server and making your Apex read methods cacheable to boost performance. It also means you're absolutely relentless about creating reusable utilities to keep your code dry. Don't repeat yourself. And things like handling errors gracefully and adding clear comments, they aren't optional. They're essential for any app you want to maintain long-term. So we've seen the structure and we've talked about the rules. Now let's see how this whole thing comes together to build a real, functioning application. This is where the blueprint really starts to shine. So imagine this flow, right? It all starts when a page component on a record page loads up. That page component then calls one or more feature components, let's say an account details component. That feature component then calls an Apex method to get its data. And all along the way, utility files might be used for things like formatting dates, and base components like a spinner are used to render that generic UI. See? Every part has its role and they all work together.
So let's wrap this up with the most important takeaways. A clear folder structure is not a nice-to-have. It is absolutely essential for any project that needs to scale. Separating your components into base, feature, and page types creates so much clarity.
Using utilities for shared logic keeps your code clean, and when you enforce strict standards, the result is an application that's actually a pleasure to work on. It's readable, it's scalable, and it's truly maintainable.
And that brings us to the final thought. You now have the professional's blueprint for building robust, enterprise-level Lightning Web Components. So the question is, how are you going to take this back and apply it? What's the first thing you could refactor in your current project to set it on a better path for the future?